If you've never had them before, gnocchi are simple little Italian pasta dumplings. I remember when I used to make traditional gnocchi, the fear was always your dumplings might be too tough. The aspiration was always for pillowy gnocchi. When working with gluten-free gnocchi though, the pillowy texture is actually almost always built in. The aspiration instead is for pillowy but also tender gnocchi. They need to have enough structure to hold up under your tooth. I picked up a super simple technique for pillowy, tender, perfect, gluten-free gnocchi. Stay tuned and I'm going to tell you exactly what that is. It's very simple. These have 3 ingredients: potatoes, cassava flour, and egg yolk. Now, it's true that when someone says potato, my head doesn't immediately veer towards a summery dish. Yet, when I go to the farmer's market right now in mid to late July here, there's new potatoes everywhere. New potatoes are typically small. They have thin skin and usually a high moisture content. They also taste incredible. So, even if potatoes in fact are summery, since they grow now, I want to make this recipe still feel more summery. Immediately, I went with lemons. Lemons make everything bright and refreshing. Gnocchi al Limone. For the vegetable, I couldn't resist using Swiss chard here. It's very young at this time of year, and both the leaves and the stalks are tender enough to eat raw still, if you want. Swiss chard, oddly enough, always reminds me of shucking corn. It has the same aroma of fresh silk from a corn husk. It plays into this nostalgia I have of shucking corn as a kid. It's unexpected, but it's still very welcome. Now, to start making the gnocchi, I'm going to first boil the potatoes. I'll leave the skins on and hope some of those nutrients from the skin make their way into the potato as they cook. By the way, it's also super easy to peel your potatoes after you cook them. You can do it with your hands and do not need any tools whatsoever. These are done when you stick a fork in them and there's little to no resistance. Now, this tool is optional but recommended. This is a food mill. There are grating plates with different size holes to push the food through. For gnocchi, I use the ones with the smallest holes. Now, by passing the potatoes through a food mill, they get this really, really smooth texture. You can also use a ricer here for pretty much the same sort of effect, or you can just mash the potatoes until they're smooth. The dough comes together pretty quickly from here on out. I add the egg yolk, a pinch of salt, and then instead of using a complicated gluten-free flour blend here, I just went with cassava flour. When I made cassava tortillas for my gluten-free burrito recipe a couple of months back, they were tender, chewy, and pliable. That's exactly the texture I'm looking for in these gnocchi. I add a little bit of flour at a time here and then just work it in until the dough tells me to stop. The dough is no longer sticking to my hands and it's also not really taking in any more flour when I need it. That means the dough has said, stop. To make the gnocchi, I take about a quarter of the dough and roll it into a cylinder about 3/4 of an inch in diameter. Then I'll cut it into pieces that are about 1 inch in length or so. These are pretty traditional sized gnocchi, but feel free to experiment. Now, technically you can stop right here, but there's one more step I never miss when making gnocchi. Any pasta dish is about its relationship with the sauce. I always want my gnocchi to have ridges to help capture that sauce that I'm serving it with. So, to make that happen, I just grab a fork and roll each gnocco along the back side of it to give it those characteristic ridged stripes. Our gnocchi are now fully formed. Alright, you've waited long enough. Are you ready for the secret to perfect, pillowy, tender gnocchi? You put them in the fridge for at least 30 minutes. That's the secret. It's an important secret though. It's simple, but it's important. Put them in the fridge for at least 30 minutes and keep them there just until you drop them into the boiling water. Without this step, I've found the gnocchi lose most of their structure if they go into the boiling water at room temperature. They get flabby, and then the sauce gets a bit gummy and kind of clunky. The simple trick of refrigerating them first results in perfectly cooked gnocchi. Just so long as you don't overcook them. Okay, now while those are chilling, let's make a lemon sauce really quick. First, I'm going to peel 2 lemons with my paring knife. Using the whole lemon peel here helps give a deeper lemon flavor than I've ever really been able to get by using just the zest. Once I peel the lemon strips, I'll remove the pith with a sharp knife. I find it comes off pretty easily by just pressing the side of the knife flat against the cutting board and then filleting off that bitter white pith. Definitely don't skip this step, your sauce will be way too bitter to eat. Alright, now once they're cleaned of this pith, I'll roughly chop up the peels and then just set them to the side. Don't worry about your knife work here, this is all going into the blender very soon. Next, I'm going to use 1 clove of garlic. Feel free to use more if you're into that sort of thing. And then saute it quickly in a small amount of olive oil. I toss in the lemon peels and then add in about 1/2 to 3/4 of a cup of water. I'm going to let that simmer for about 15 minutes just until the lemon peels have softened, and then this all goes straight into the blender. Now, if you don't have enough liquid to make the mixture spin, just add some more water until you do. You can always reduce this a little bit later if necessary. Puree the mixture, starting at a low speed and then slowly bring it up to high until it's smooth. One quick note on blending olive oil and lemon peels. Both of them have high concentrations of polyphenols, which are great for you, but also can become really bitter when you put them at high speeds through a blender. By using just a splash of olive oil when sauteing the garlic and not cranking the blender too high or for too long, you can largely avoid this. Alright, so with the base of the lemon sauce all but done, I quickly separate the chard leaves from the stalks. I'll chiffonade the leaves and then I'm going to chop those ribbons up into rough pieces. Next, I'll thinly slice the stalks. And by the way, I love how Swiss chard is naturally a little bit juicy and salty and crunchy. So it really makes for a fun kind of garnish. Okay. All of our components are ready to go. This dish comes together really quickly at the end here, so I always want to make sure to have my mise en place ready to go, so all I'm doing is adding prepped ingredients at the right times. I've got a pot of slightly salted water boiling on one burner. On another, I have my saute pan that I use to cook the garlic and lemon peels going over a medium heat. I'll add the lemon mixture to the saute pan and then add a splash of hot water. Then I'll add the charred greens to the pan so they start wilting in the sauce. This helps a little bit to have them cling better to the pasta. Next, out of the fridge come our chilled gnocchi and they go straight into the boiling salted water. I'll cook the gnocchi for just 3 minutes in the water before I fish them out with a spider or a slotted spoon. I'll add them right into the lemon sauce to finish cooking. The gnocchi will cook for another 2 to 3 minutes in the sauce. Be very careful not to overcook these, because when you get the timing right, they are absolutely perfect. To finish, give the gnocchi a quick squeeze of lemon juice and just a drizzle of olive oil. One more toss in the pan and they go onto the plate. I'll add the charred stalks on top for a fresh, crunchy last flourish. And that's it. That's Gnocchi al Limone with Young Summer Chard. It's funny. After I stopped eating gluten, I felt I couldn't really go back to Italian cuisine. Certainly not as I used to know it. But coming back after all of these years and making fresh gnocchi that tastes like this, I don't know, it's kind of made me rethink that presumption. I've changed so have some of the ingredients, but the cuisine really feels like it can adapt pretty well along with me. Definitely more than I gave it credit for in the past. For that, I'm encouraged. If you like this video, click that like button down below. If you want to see more recipes like this, I make them every week. Click subscribe and you will not miss a single one. Thanks for coming and watching the recipe. That's going to be it for me this week. I'll see you next time. Ciao tutti.